Have you ever studied the size of the logistics train that would accompany a legion? Pardon me. No, not directly. However, other people have, thankfully, and there's some really interesting work that's been done on that. Because after all, people are people, and you can estimate speeds. You can estimate a number of different things if you've got a set number of parameters in place. And there's an individual called Steve Kaye, K-A-Y-E, and he's done some really interesting work on this. So I suggest if you want to get really into the numbers on this, because he really does go into the numbers on this, that you go and search for his name. And here's essentially what he came up with. So he went with the idea that you have a Roman army of the sort of 1st or 2nd century AD, formed of 5,000 men or just over, and they're moving from one temporary camp to another. And in that instance, and marching on a Roman road and 6 files, so 6 men side to side, the column length that he estimated would be 3.9 miles. That's 6.4 kilometers or thereabouts. Of that, only 1.1 miles would have been the soldiery. The rest, 2.8 miles, would have been the wagons, the pack animals, that kind of a thing. So it gives you a good idea just how much stuff went with the Roman army when they were moving anywhere. And in terms of how quickly they were marching, again, loads of variables here, but we're working on the premise this is on a Roman road, so you'd move a bit quicker. And I think he's taken out oxen, because oxen move particularly slowly. I think he's just adding in mules here, and mules can keep up to a relative pace. He estimated that the march speed would be around 2.85 miles an hour. That's 4.5 kilometers an hour, or thereabouts. And he's also added in the idea that this wouldn't be in a continuous march. There'd be pauses, so that's a sort of estimated average speed. So you might only march, for example, for 50 minutes, then take a 10-minute break, that kind of a thing. And I think this is a great piece of work. It's very interesting, and I've seen those numbers cited elsewhere. And yeah, I find all this kind of stuff very, very interesting. I hope that's helped answer your question. But just to add, the minute you start moving away from that particular set of parameters, you start throwing in variables. So for example, marching off a Roman road, that becomes a bit more tricky to estimate. And you can imagine that in certain instances, the Roman army would be able to march that bit quicker because it might need to, and therefore perhaps the pack animals didn't come with it initially. You know, that kind of a thing. Anyway, I hope that goes some way to answering that question within that set parameters. And remember, Steve Kaye, if you can go and find his work, it's well worth a read.